And then it's just a matter of sharing it.
I get mad when comments come in that I disagree with. There was one guy, it's like, oh, Watchmen was the book in the bookstores. It's like, Watchmen was a year later.
Right.
The book collection.
Yeah, I mean, it's the peanut gallery, man.
It's so irritating, though, because
there
people say that, and it's like, you don't see the dates, you don't see the factual inaccuracies. You just see somebody, oh, yeah, I was working in retail at the time, and Watchmen was the book that we were selling.
Yeah, and it's just talking retro. Like, it's the guy who just watches Sports Center and then is trying to sit with the other guys around the table, trying to, speak on shit. 1 second, June. There was one dude that came in that was like, he did a whole piece about leave Sue Storm's hair alone, man. Women absolutely had hairstyles that were like that in the 80s and blah blah blah. It's like, yo, you mad?
Also, I don't feel like you said this is a made-up hairstyle. Again, that's the other ones that make me so mad, are the comments that are like, nobody said that.
Right. All right, Jimmy, I'm just about to email it, and then we'll be set up. That thing is key. TV party, public access show in New York City that is like hosted by Debbie Harry and Glenn O'Brien, who he was super close with Andy Warhol and was like editor of Interview magazine, and then GQ he was an important part of. They first broke like Basquiat was on, like, see your thumb is on Basquiat during the Samo era, when it was like, hey, why are you writing this Samo thing? So it's like before he breaks in fine arts, first appearance of George Clinton on TV, Parliament Funkadelic, like super, super key. And of course, that isn't put out by anybody in America. Like, it's put out by Press Pop, the Japanese publisher. I'm sorry, Jimmy, I just gotta get the link now.
I get the old man brain of like Press Pop and Sub Pop.
Oh yeah,
crossing wires in my brain. I think of that stuff too as being like, well, I mean, I guess Press Pop's still active and stuff, but in my head, like, those things come into my brain 25 years ago.
Sure, yeah, totally. And like, I don't doubt that they call themselves Press Pop in deference to Sub Pop, because it was such a influential. Because like Press Pop is so low key, it's small, it's just two people. Like, it has a lot of spiritual similarities. What's going on, guys? We're set up a little bit differently to try to maximize our audio when it comes to doing our stream later. Which, Jimmy, if you want to let the people, if you could type it in or something. We got Eastman and Laird. We're going through Ninja Turtles 8 and Leonardo 1. And Cho's going to join us as well. And then pin it, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, I don't know if all you guys have read those early Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issues or not, but it's funny, like, all my back issues I would read in horrible order.
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah.
Like, whenever you'd get one, you'd read it, and who knows, it might be years before you'd get the next one or the previous one or whatever.
Right.
And going through that Leonardo, man, I'm super pumped to talk about that. That's a great comic.
That was probably my it's in the first edition that I got. So it's basically the first Ninja Turtle comics from Eastman and Laird that I read. So it's like, I know that so well, and it works so much better in the black and white because they drop out the duotone in the color piece, so it's all kind of one stripe.
Got it.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be a really fun one.
I think that's an influence of Alan Moore.
You know, that's one of the questions I have for them is where it comes from.
Yeah.
Because there were different ways that would run. I mean, old comic strips would do that, where they'd have like the runner. You know, there were a lot of things that would have a runner.
Yeah,
so I'm curious, like, where exactly they decided that one.
Yeah,
the wordlessness too. I wonder if it was a time saver, if they're crunching, because that's also getting into that. Got to be like the brutal schedule. You see, there's more and more names popping up in the credits,
right,
which in my mind equates to busier and busier, and Mirage is up and running, and it's a lot. What are we doing first? Oh, you hold up that way now. I'm like gonna hold it up over here.
Yeah,
what's up, guys?
It feels very unorthodox. Doesn't
It's
it,
strange.
It's gonna take some getting used to. Do you feel comfortable? You good?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be able to see the issue well?
Oh, where do we see the issue?
Well, I mean, I'll get the monitor.
Yeah.
Because we're shooting all that regular, but I mean, like, you know, like whenever we do our commenting and shit.
You'll be able to watch us now going into the kitchen for drink refills and things of that nature. It's gonna change everything, you guys.
Yeah, now we're actually gonna have to shut the door while we whiz, man, and now everybody's not gonna know that we look at each other naked while we pee. Yeah, so with the StreamYard stuff,
George Vega art, they broke the 180 rule. You know what, George? Technically, we did not.
Right.
We are still we're still on the other side of that 180-degree axis, just barely though. Man, I don't have any Denver visits planned anytime this year.
Yeah, we just went that once.
Yeah.
Dink.
Whenever I was
you going to that Comics Pro thing?
No, I wasn't going to.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess we didn't leave enough of an impression, Jimmy.
Yeah, no official invite. I don't know what's going on time-wise, but I just feel like I am behind on everything, even though I don't know that there's a deadline I'm behind on, but it feels like time-wise it's just...
Yeah.
Been kind of a rocky start to the year.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Like I'm in that mode where I got to get the Switchblade covers in, and man, I always feel so unsure, you know, like of like that part of it, because I don't know what they're responding to.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if they give like.
They're like doing some meeting and they're gonna get back later, and it's like, well, just tell me what you do. Like, why does it have to go through a meeting? Like, just tell me which direction to go, and then I'll focus a lot of energy and come up with like 10 designs that way. You
know what? That's bullshit. If they're gonna we're going to have a committee talk about this, they ought to let you hear the committee talk.
Right.
Because otherwise you get like 2 notes, and if you have a question, now it's completely off the rails.
Right.
Yeah, it's surprising the publishers aren't a little better at the communication part. It's kind of
yeah. You know what? I'm going to hit them up about that, actually. Like, yeah, like if you're going to talk about my shit, make me part of the meeting. I like that.
Yeah, because you may have specific questions that you could apply if you actually knew the answers. Like, why is this better than that?
Right. This case is shielded.
Yeah, I think we're doing Heroes this year, right? I swore that we said that whenever I feel like we...
Yeah, we saw Shelton.
Yeah, somewhere. Baltimore, maybe?
It was in New York.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Heroes, as far as I know. I think it might have been something that we discussed with them in the context of a show, and if you guys ever work a busy show, you know, it's easy for that stuff to, did I dream that? Did that really happen? So, but yeah, I like Heroes. I plan to go there. Vlad, have you guys done Heroes before? It's definitely a show for comics fans to do at some point. You know, even if you're traveling, like that's a really good show. Can't imagine being a comics fan and not enjoying that one.
Right.
Especially if you're engaged in the comic art side of it. Shelton and company bring in so many artists. Get a chance to actually see a bunch of artwork.
Right.
Talk shop. And shop. A lot of good comics vendors there.
All right, guys. First episode up is going to be Amazing Spider-Man 210. First appearance of Madam Web. All right, Jimmy. Good to go?
Yeah.
Is that light on? Good. Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
You know what? 1 second. We're a little further from the mic and stuff.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so we're going to pull this closer, and then we'll pull that out. It's because we have the table pulled out.
West Coast Avengers said a Madam Web episode might get more views than the movie.
How could that movie not suck a dick?
Yeah.
It's impossible. Like, the character has no legs. No pun intended.
I used to think, like, I saw, like, I don't know, half the movies or something, and at this point I might see 10% of them. I don't know. The stuff that I like doesn't translate at all. You know, I want to see the drawings, and that's about it.
All that said, this is a heck of a comic.
It's a very good comic, yeah. I enjoyed reading it.
For what it is.
It's kind of fun to... I like having a cross-section of books in a week, because, like, if you read a bunch of 90s stuff, and then you go back and read, like, I think it's 1980.
Yeah.
It's just such a different... It's almost a different form. Certainly don't make comics like this anymore.
That's true. All right. Good to go?
Yeah.
Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
First appearance of Madam Web under the microscope today. We are a daily YouTube channel. More than 1,700 videos out there. We might have talked about your favorites, so hit the magnifying glass on the front page. Check out those episodes where we talk about your faves. Jimmy and I are on the road to 100,000 subscribers here on Cartoonist Kayfabe. Let's hit that number sooner than later. If you subscribe and you hit whatever buttons you need to hit to get those videos delivered early, you'll get a jump on things like the Kayfabe effect, which happens whenever we talk about comics. They disappear off the racks pretty rapidly. They disappear off eBay. The listeners get the cheapest copies online. If you want to get in even earlier than that, you got to be a part of the Patreon and become a King Kayfaber on that Patreon. You'll get everything first. Plus, you'll be hanging out with us in this live stream recording chat room that we have going on as we make these videos. You get to see all of our blue language in between the videos. And if you really have a bug in your butt about the channel or something, that's the place where you join us, watch the streams, and maybe you could catch us saying something that you could get us kicked out of comics for. Without further ado, Amazing Spider-Man 210, first appearance of Madam Web, and introduces John Romita Jr. into the fold as the regular penciler on Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and we'll have some fun looking at him and his art. I think it's really strong. But this cover is wild to me. Like, what a strange looking character. It's that perfect 8-year-old is your target audience kind of character, where, like, hard to make that make sense, but also kind of makes perfect sense in a comic book, especially of this era where I feel like this is what stuff was.
Logic be damned. And it is. This is a perfect kind of tongue-in-cheek superhero comic of this day and age. Man, it was fun to read.
It was. Denny
O'Neill's on the writing chops, and it's Joe Sinnott on the inks, which is really a sexy little bit of varnish on top of JR.
Yeah, there are moments of polish that remind me of JR/SR.
Absolutely. Like, that face looks like a John Romita Sr. face.
It does. And it was thrilling to go through this. You know, we've talked to John Romita Jr. I'm a fan of his art. And this is kind of like, I hate to say raw, but it's an earlier, maybe before he really gets into his mature style, which I think of as blocky, very three-dimensional.
Yeah.
But it looks great. And when we talked to him, he talked about like doing breakdowns with some of the first work that he did in comics.
Yeah, that's before this, of course.
And I feel like that comes through here in that the reading is so smooth. The page layouts, the panel to panel, all of that stuff is great. And then you put Sinnott on top of it, and it's like, it's about as good as I think you make comic art of this era. Like a Marvel style fits perfectly within that house style. When I picture Marvel, this could be the comic.
Agreed, man. Compelling splash page that kind of brings you into the game. Really thoughtful with stuff like the acoustic tile being popped out and the different ways that it could sort of come undone.
Yeah, and our story here is there's I guess a fourth newspaper starting up, and shenanigans behind the scenes of that. People trying to hijack control of that. I love this panel. Like right off the bat, you start looking at this comic and it's like all these characters just walking down the street. It's amazing. I don't see panels that look like this.
Petey's got a new squeeze, man, and she's one of those broads that's down with chicanery, psychics. Like what were some of the other things, man? Yes, psychics, fortune tellers, that types of shit. And she got some literature about a woman called Madam Web that's going to be able to tell her the future or give her some good fortune or something. And of course, Petey, he's a pragmatist. The guy who got bit by the spider that can climb up walls.
Exactly.
He just ain't buying that.
No.
Who fought a rogues gallery of the best villains in comics. That's a bridge too far.
It's so funny. You would think he would see this and just recognize instantly, looks like this is someone I'll be fighting sooner or later. But nope, doesn't put two and two together that way.
This is one of the only images in this entire piece that has the vaguest look of what I think of JRJR, and really it's just the shape of the hair.
I love this era too because it reminds me of like Saturday Night Fever kind of age. You know, it's a little bit earlier than a lot of when I think of 80s. Like this is really 70s,
right?
Even though it's technically 1980 release date, but this is that 70s vestiges are still populating the characters, their outfits, their haircuts, and I'm there for it.
Right, man. It's almost like an Uncle Scrooge comic. I mean, it really is. It's a kid's comic, and we have our foil kind of setting up his little kayfabe robbery or whatever.
Yeah, and Spider-Man coming in, like I was looking at this week and thinking, we do not see comics that look like this anymore. Spider-Man coming in, it's always like, that's a money shot. It's got to be a half splash. It's got to be some dynamic point of view. And I feel like this is a cartoon. Like it's almost the toy coming in. Total clarity in reading, and I think Spider-Man looks great throughout this issue, but it just feels different than the way comics are done now.
That sharp Sinnott inking, I was thinking about like, there might be like one inker to ring in every era. And it's like Sinnott on Kirby in like the 60s. And then it's like Tom Palmer might be the dude of like late 60s, early 70s. And then it becomes Terry Austin, who I think is the signature style because, you know, he puts that penmanship over top of Byrne. But that same style is kind of applied to the George Perez comics of the time.
It is, and inspires quickly like the following generation of the Art Adams and you know, even Mike Golden goes in that direction.
Exactly. And then like who's the next round, you know, in like the late 80s or something. I get, you know, Scott Williams will be the 90s guy. But so like between Austin and Scott Williams there must be somebody.
Man, that's a good question. I try to figure out like where does somebody like Williamson and also Jansen fit in? And Jansen in some ways is kind of like a Tom Palmer senior. You know, in some ways, certainly has his own stuff, but I don't know who the stylistic guy would be that would be the bridge there.
That's interesting because Sienkiewicz comes to mind also. So there's like the hairy style, you know, like Palmer is the thick and thins and with a little wispy crosshatches. Terry Austin is the tech pen guy, and then Klaus and Sienkiewicz and Kyle Baker, like it's almost a school. It becomes a school of the hairy cartoonist.
If you think of Jansen and Sienkiewicz together, it's almost like the Fine Artists,
sure,
where they're just pulling in every tool and really kind of doing a lot of stuff we hadn't seen before, almost painterly at times.
This is beautiful. Marie Severin, quite sure. That's her signature, I think. Back to the action, James.
Tell me Spider-Man doesn't look cool in like almost all of these kinds of poses. I love the way the webbing wraps around his head. There's just stuff, like he's still a dude in a suit here.
Right.
You know, we're not going the McFarlane route of like, let's really push this into almost abstract figure territory, which I also like. But this is kind of refreshing to go back in. I don't read a lot of Spider-Man comics, so this was kind of nice. And, love it. Like, that feels like right off the model sheet that, who knows, Rita Jr. may have been drawing following his dad's lead as a little kid, looking at the stuff his dad was doing.
Yeah, because that's what this stuff looks like.
Yes.
The spacing of the webs and stuff. Like, it's John Romita Sr. type stuff. Now, we talked with JR. We have a shoot interview. Pretty modest one. Got to get another one on the hook, right? But, he had Jim Shooter breathing down his neck, and he had his father breathing down his neck. Plus, he had the whole Nepo baby thing that he was contending with. So this is a conservative JR, but he's taken no shorts.
That's a great page. That whole page I celebrate.
So rare to see such horizontals, especially at this era, because you would think that Jim Shooter would be against that. But man, if you just isolated that, you would think that it is John Romita Sr. with like Jim Mooney on inks.
Yeah, and I liked looking at some of the background details in this issue and thinking, like, they don't look photo referenced.
Right.
Even though they look good.
Comic book buildings.
Right.
And I celebrate that.
Yeah, there's something about it that reads differently to me than the heavily referenced stuff.
You know what Synod is doing, man? Like, it's brush webs.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I don't think you ever see anybody do that. I feel like it's always pen.
Here we go.
What a money shot.
This is what we're here for.
Yeah. So this lady, this is, you know how they kept Stephen Hawking alive with all kinds of gimmicks? This is what we have here.
I was going to say Darren Aronofsky's Spy movie, whenever the guy builds like the supercomputer in his little apartment. I feel like that's a little bit of what we have here with the tech all around her.
Because it is an apartment. Like, she pays rent. Right. She's got a landlord and stuff, and probably like needs the super to come in whenever the garbage disposal is backed up. Though this could be full of feces and stuff. Like maybe she doesn't have to move anywhere. It's all intravenous.
Yeah, there's a lot of questionable calls. Like, this is a person who may be not very mobile, and now you're going to put her feet into this sock?
Right.
That seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, she's really getting into character, too. Like, I'm going to call myself Madam Web, and pretty wild.
But all that said, it does look really great visually.
It does.
And even whenever you get a close-up of her, I feel like it still looks pretty cool. And, her abilities, that kind of psychic and probably combined with a few other things, I think it's a pretty neat character.
It is, and what's crazy is she in our time, like, she don't show up in our Spider-Man comics that like McFarlane's fucking around with. I only was introduced to her in the '90s cartoon. She shows up, and not even of course, right? You gotta do Electro and the Lizard and all those guys first. Maybe like season 3, there's like the Madam Web saga, and I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty cool looking character. I had no idea that it came this early. I actually pulled this issue years ago when we were going to do the JR shoot interview, and I still don't think we put out the video that we did in place of this, which is literally JR's first Marvel work. I think we still have that sitting on the back burner, but this is when he gets introduced into the Spider-Man fold. See, don't those big chunky lines? It's Synod that's really bringing that John Romita Sr. vibe to it.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool contrast because I always think of Daredevil as his breakout, and it's those fine lines of Al Williamson inking over top of him.
Right.
And this is such an opposite approach, and man, as soon as you start flipping through it, it's so attractive.
The Spider-Man character with all the quips and all that shit, do you have any recollection of any of these? Because I have zero.
Yeah, I don't remember
it's
these.
Before my time.
But I was reading these, and like they even get into the news hour. Which I can't imagine appeals to the kids who are watching, Mighty Mouse at 8 a.m., but maybe I'm wrong.
This would be the heartbreaking stuff. Like, you would watch cartoons all morning, and then they would start to sprinkle in humans, and it could be just a human host for something, or maybe it'd be like a game show or something, and it's like, oh, dude, I know golf is coming soon. They're going to be putting golf on. I think you did a piece related to that.
I did, yeah. And you know what I was going to say? I do remember the Fat Albert cartoon. I think that got into syndication. That might have been on for a few, long enough to be in syndication, because I don't remember it specifically to Saturday mornings, but I do remember it.
When Denny O'Neil's the writer here, and I think he paced a pretty decent comic, and it does have so much magic to it that you have to suspend disbelief, but when you're 8, that's what you're supposed to do. That said, I am fairly confident that I know Denny O'Neil's writing voice, and I guess I read him on some Spider-Man. It's interesting the way that he writes the Amazing Spider-Man monthly is different than the way he writes Spider-Man as a character in those Frank Miller annuals. You know, he matures it a little bit, but Denny O'Neil doing the quips, because like that's a part of Spider-Man, right? When you're flying and you're fighting, you got to have that bit. It makes me realize that's Stan Lee's voice. You know, like the Spider-Man quipping, you know, hyperbole, that's Stan's soapbox talk. So now Denny O'Neil and any writer who comes along has to write Stan Lee hyperbole. It's interesting. I never thought about that until I read this comic.
Yeah, that didn't occur to me either. And, you know, to the Denny O'Neil part, the plot is Spider-Man finds a picture of Madam Web after his girlfriend had showed it to him, and in the aftermath of the kidnapping at the newspaper. And that's enough for him to be like, well, that's the only clue I've got.
Right.
So off to Madam Web he goes. And I kind of like it. It's like a detective novel, but just truncated down into your 20-page comic book size.
Right. And she's still mysterious, man. Not quite a villain. She drops a little bit of science that does bear true as we flip the page.
Yeah, they use her well in that sense, because she has a couple of pieces that she contributes to the issue, and it goes seamlessly into the next scene.
Right. And when you have something like this built, if you don't use it in the fight sequence, missed opportunity. And I do think that that's something that comes with the Marvel method in certain ways. You know, like I don't know that Denny O'Neil wrote that into this comic, but when it comes to the visuals, it's a great little, you know, it's that James Cameron thing in T2 where there's the car chase and then you're just gonna smash into a truck that has a house built on the back of it. Like what storytelling purposes does that have? It just looks cool. It's a visual medium.
Yeah, it's good to keep that in mind.
Man,
if you're a maker,
John Romita Sr. all over that. You know, I just adore this Senate inking, and it's so fascinating that he kept that inking career up through the '80s. You know, with Ron Frenz on all the best Thor comics.
He's so good at it. Like when you say he's, you know, kind of the defining inker of that generation. Yeah, you know, like he's the best of this stuff. In some weird ways, you can almost trace a line from here to Charles Burns.
Oh, yeah,
where it's just
absolutely.
that controlled brush. Hey, I was admiring the glass break now that you've called it to my attention in previous videos. There are overlapping shards as Spider-Man crashes.
Some variants in the breaks and stuff have it overlap the character a little bit. Yeah, you know, it's
very sound glass breaking.
It's important, man. It's something that I think about. Like drawing chaos is not as easy as one would think it is.
Right. I enjoy this stuff too, you know. Put Spider-Man upside down. Like to me, that's a fun gimmick for this character. So you put that stuff in there. It's almost something you'd see in the cartoon, something animated, kind of cinematic, but really kid.
Yeah. The thing that they do too with perspective is kind of like what you're taught when it comes to creating simplicity and stuff. Is like you have three planes, you have black, white, gray, and use them whenever you're showing off like a cityscape. Man, if you looked at that in black and white, you could imagine that that's Charles Burns.
Yeah, you know, to your point of them drawing in perspective, there's a cleanliness to all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's probably part of the trade-off of not doing a photo reference. You see it a lot in this kind of stuff where you'll get like a I don't know, 3/4 view of like The Office. There was one earlier. You see it on like building rooftops, and it's just very clean.
Right.
And that was something that once people started doing the dirtier stuff, really the McFarlane rubble kind of stuff, or an alley that's full of like crosshatch lines and things that you couldn't identify but feel like grime.
Right.
That stuff, I don't know, I guess it's my age that it was like, okay, you need to do that. That looks cool or whatever. But now I go back and see this stuff that's so clean and I love it.
Yeah, it fits the entire aesthetic of the entire comic, because this isn't reality and they're not drawing reality. So it's the difference of like the Denny O'Neil Green Lantern comics with Neil Adams, where he's writing basically at this level with injecting a little bit of modern day pathos to it, and then you put Neil Adams on top of it. Cognitive dissonance like a motherfucker, man. It's art and writing competing to the point of caricature, almost. There's synergy here.
I love the flipping the car over. Very very simple, easy to understand, but also looks really good. Looks like there's some impact there, like he's actually lifting something that has a mass.
And look at that, it looks like a bitch to fucking draw.
Yeah, it does.
That looks like such a bitch with the little
although I like to imagine that he has a reference,
sure
and all it is the thing is rotated. You know what I mean? You're looking at like a car ad or something, and it's, oh yeah, the back 3/4 view.
Right.
Flip that on its side and you'll be okay. You know, the story here is the wealthy woman who owns this newspaper has like a young counterpart who turns out to be Parker's girlfriend posing as her. That's who's kidnapped. So it is kind of this whole convoluted, like an old PI kind of story.
All's well that ends well, though, Jimmy, because evil is vanquished. We saved the day. We have our little epilogue piece where it is still Peter Parker, so he can't get everything he wants, man. So when he grabs the guy out, he basically is like, you better tell everybody that I didn't try to destroy people in New York, that I am just not a terrorist. It still doesn't end so well. Gets a phone call from Madam Web, who says, hey, Peter, how'd it go today? I'm glad you're well. So with all of her clairvoyance or whatever her powers are, she could tell that he's Spider-Man. And he goes with it. Thank you. And then it ends in perfect comic book fashion, specifically Spider-Man. You're being talked about right now. You're in for a raise, but it's not going to come the way that you want it to. She's on the phone with Peter Parker while J. Jonah's trying to give him a blast, trying to give him a call, and he's pissed off that he can't get in touch with him.
I'm thrilled with this page. The whole thing, I think, looks really good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things I look at and I think, why am I not thrilled with whatever the new Spider-Man issue is? And I can't totally explain it, but I feel like this is comic booky. It's clear. It's attractive. Each panel looks good and is easy to follow. I don't know where this formula goes.
Right.
Why it's not there anymore.
Right.
I don't look at that and think this is inherently an 8-year-old. So if we're going to aim at, 22-year-old readers or 44-year-old readers, we have to abandon whatever this is. Because I don't look at that and think, oh, it's so simple. It's like kid simple. It isn't.
Right.
It's a really nice looking page. I just don't know where that goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a thread recently on Facebook. It was Jim Keefe, the guy who did Flash Gordon for a while and Sally Forth and stuff. And he was just talking about the pace of the Marvel method and how the artists could bang out these stories and have them move rather than the talky stuff. And I agree with him, and I'm on board. And I was shocked. I saw Matt Boris pop in and was like, it doesn't all have to, sorry to put it to you, but all comics don't have to work like they did, blah, blah, blah. Like, the heaps of dialogue, all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you don't need the heaps of dialogue. Like, you could have this and not have the bullshit show and tell parts, the Stan Lee putting words in every square inch that there is in a figure moving. You can have both. It's not all or nothing kind of thing. But you do got to move these stories along. You got to use the unit of an issue of comics to its full potential, not abuse the reader into buying one small part of something bigger and charging $5-6
right.
for the privilege.
And I am not suggesting it's a nostalgia thing. Because if you show me a bunch of comics from November 1980, I don't know that I'm going to feel about them the way I felt about this issue. This was a well-done comic to me.
Look at Black Hole. Look at a Klaus comic. They are paced and composed very similarly. Look at any Blows Bros comic. They are paced the same way, using the same forms and stuff. Those are an exercise in marrying the dialogue and the art up and keeping things moving. Pretty good comic, great comic. You could do far worse than getting your hands on the first appearance of Madam Web in Amazing Spider-Man 210, and it tickles you enough that it does make you curious about the character a little bit. I have no idea where it goes because clearly she wasn't part of the mixture at all when I was grabbing comics.
There's a footnote in here that there are like 6 issues of Spider-Woman that she's hanging around in. So I think that maybe she got sidetracked quickly into, auxiliary Spider Universe books.
Oh, so she already appeared before?
I think so.
Oh.
I think so. Oh, you know what? That doesn't make sense.
No, because you know what? Here's why I pulled this.
Yes.
On the Key Collectors app, this is a trending book right now, and I think it's because of her first appearance.
Let me see what that footnote was so that I'm not too much of an idiot on this. Oh, you know what? It must have been about a different storyline that's in Spider-Man 25 to 30. My bad.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good to go?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me? I would suggest, on your phone, grab that Key Collectors app because every week there's a top 20 trending key comics, and then you could look through those and like whatever
Yeah.
you have, pull some of those. So much garbage because it's all about movie shit.
Yeah, I know retailers, and they'll be like, you know, whatever the next movie's announced, and then it's like you find you pull those first issues out, first appearances, and it'll be like, oh, that's a $10 book now. It's
Right.
like, I don't know, who's buying that? Really?
They do, man. It's a whole CGC shit.
I guess so.
My first the Kanye West variant of my hip hop stuff is $100 book now.
Yeah, I mean,
It's showing up on websites and shit. as
some of
like
the stuff makes sense to me, but just the default of like, there's a movie mentioned with this character, and
Yeah.
here's the cameo.
Yeah.
Way before they become interesting, even in a lot of cases. I mean, we've all seen those first appearances where it's like that doesn't really resemble the character we all.
This wasn't very good.
No,
There's nothing here for me to pull really.
no, there wasn't. But you know what? Flip one. There was somebody else. There was like an assistant. I don't know if it's in this or not. There was an assistant editor who showed up and ends up going on for like a Hollywood assignment, and like the only comic he edited was Marvel's. And he talks about that experience because he said it's before it's a hit. Pages are coming in.
Put it in here. Save it. Save it. Because I got bored with it, to be honest, and I quit reading it.
Everybody at home, it's Marvel's Epilogue is what we're taking a look at.
Yes, Marvel's Epilogue 2019. And shouts to whoever sent it to us. Because like I was just going through my stuff randomly, and I'm like, fuck yeah.
You know how you were talking on the weekly about having books disappear from your collection? I swore I had this and like can't find it. But in my head, it's even a different cover. So it's not like, oh, it came through the mail
Right.
and I just didn't end up going home with it. I probably flipped through it because it was a different cover even. It was like, I guess, the main cover. And there's quite a few of those books that come through my brain where it's like, yeah, I've got that in these boxes.
Well, maybe it's one of these boxes.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Marvel's Epilogue. Alex Ross is coming back to his mythology. First, we must remind you that we are a daily YouTube channel with more than 1,700 videos out there for your viewing pleasure. We may have talked about your favorite comics. We talked about the original Marvels. Hit the magnifying glass on the front page of the Kayfabe channel. Search for your favorite titles. Check out those episodes. We're getting super close to hitting 100,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you join as a subscriber. Hit whatever bells and whistles are required for you to get those videos delivered to you early, because often what happens is we put a video out there and people race to eBay, Amazon to buy the cheapest copies offline. The people who have the biggest jump get first dibs on those comics, and oftentimes those buyers are the King Kayfabers on our Patreon. Support us at that level. You're getting all the videos before anybody else. Directly to the Patreon, and we have a live stream recording session where I'm good in 3 dozen of them, 4 dozen, dude. We're increasing our numbers. Jimmy are hanging out with us in the chat room right now. So without further ado, with all that out of the way, Jimmy, Marvel's Epilogue with a Ron Lim cover.
Yeah, the variant cover, not the main.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is 25th anniversary edition is when this is coming out to celebrate the Marvel's release, which it's really changed my opinion of Ross and Marvel's, the timing.
Yeah.
You know, as we keep going forward and you're able to kind of look at the 90s in, you know, in its context, Marvel's just stands out more and more.
Right.
In all of Ross's work from that decade, but it just really stands out from a lot of the trends and a lot of the stuff that was going on at that time. And Marvel's, man, instantly becomes like this iconic thing. You know, when we talked to him, that was one of my questions, was like, the day that comes out, like, your life changes, right? There aren't that many books that fit that, or movies or events that really do that for somebody. Marvel's legitimately one of those books.
Right.
Maybe Marvel's first perennial.
Good point. Yeah, good point, man. We launch right into things with our guy. Is that Phil Sheldon? Is that his name? He's got the patch on the eye, so we have our Wolverine character say, "Hey, nice patch." You know, so you got to have, this is Kurt Busiek.
It is.
He's showing off, and both of them. See, they're a tandem.
I feel like this is a 27-year-old reference at the time.
Yeah, they are a tandem, dude. This is Alex Ross, intense fanboy, knows his shit. Kurt Busiek knows his shit. And look at the cartooning stuff that Ross is doing by playing with depth of field and just having these kind of smears of suggestions of figures behind. That's smart cartooning.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some evolution in his art and his confidence and what he can do on pages and building panels and things from 25 years prior to this, which, of course, there should be, but not always the case.
Totally. With this sequence from the X-Men comics, Dave Cockrum put in a lot of like little Easter eggs. He drew Stan Lee and Jack Kirby sort of on the way out, like talking about these new kids, and then he drew Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum into the comic. Well, Dave Cockrum drew himself into the comic. So they'll play with some of that stuff in here, and I think Ross just would do this kind of thing in general too, where you got to pay attention to everything. If he's going to take the time to paint it, he's going to make it count for what he's interested in.
Yeah, it's a great technique that some cartoonists take advantage of, putting that kind of detail that rewards coming back to it or spending time on it. And definitely this is a comic of that sort.
Yeah, like I'm quite sure that this would be Dave Cockrum. This guy right here. And then, of course, you got your Nick Fury.
Multiple eye patches on the same page feels like some kind of storytelling rule violation.
Certainly a character design rule violation, man. Jimmy, we were in this 2 months ago?
Yes, yeah. Very nostalgic read for me, Ed. I was thinking about us there.
I had to draw this exact sequence with this, and the way that I achieved the Christmas tree was, I think I did it all in the computer, where I had the basic shape, and then I just put like little circle dots and then isolated them and then used my different colors. But seeing this motherfucker in multiple angles, that was the shit. This is almost a direct homage to the initial splash page that Cockrum drew way back then, and it's such a iconic issue that when you see this, you know what we're in store for. This is what sets the X-Men up to go into outer space, where she's going to become Phoenix, she being Jean Grey. But we're having a wholesome family moment with Sheldon and his kids. I guess it's been a while since we looked at Marvels. I don't know if the kids were even born yet.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
So it pretty much ends with the Gwen Stacy stuff, which is, a little time before this.
Yeah, I don't know how the actual years are chronicled in Marvels. I don't know like how far after Marvels these events are set. In terms of the kids or in terms of like actual continuity and how that would fit.
Yeah, they talk about some of the stuff that they wanted to do was build Wolverine into the mythology because he's such an important Marvel character, but they didn't want to do that like retcon stuff where they have Wolverine fighting alongside the Invaders in the Golden Age like Marvels stuff.
One of the things I think Ross does well in his painting is the way he depicts certain powers.
Yeah,
I think they work really well in a lot of the paint.
Sure. By doing the photorealistic stuff, do we got Christopher Reeve? And
it does look like it.
Like a Margot Kidder? It doesn't quite look like more. It looks like Jackie O. But and this might be. I mean, that's got to be Julie Schwartz or somebody.
Yeah, that's who it looks like.
By depicting these realistic characters, when you have these ground level moments where you like look up. This is everything you would want in like the Damage Control comics or something, right? Because like that's kind of what this is. It's a kind of a Damage Control.
That's an interesting call.
Type story where you got your regular folk, the people of New York, and they're seeing all the superhero battles going down, and it's not without consequence to them. I think that he does a decent job of doing his own thing, but there's Cockrum in this. Interesting too, because it's two panels. This is a panel and that's a panel. Just wild.
He does, Alex Ross, these page layouts that I find really dynamic, and there are some thumbnails and roughs in the back of this book that we'll get to.
Absolutely.
But they really stand out with some of these like diagonal shaped panels.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder now, because I don't clearly remember that standing out in the original Marvels.
Right.
And I wonder if this is a 70s invention that's like a post Neil Adams kind of approach to doing these off-grid kind of page layouts.
I think that's a good call. I think it is a direct Neil Adams inspiration. In fact, now that you bring that up, the page count is about 16, 17 pages. That is the page count of 70s Marvel. So I think they're playing with format even in that way. That's interesting. I didn't think about that the first go around. Seeing these big money shots with the characters, that's everything you want, right? Like, you've never seen such a regal Storm in comics. And it's tough, right? Because it's ground level, so you have these things where you want to get your money shots in, but you have to build these in too, and they create such good suspense isn't the word, but you really do feel like, yeah, this is the man on the street isn't going to see this. The villain gets to see this, but this is what regular folk get to see when there's a squabble among superheroes and stuff.
I actually would fault this one a little bit. This is the lightning burst where Storm is transforming into Storm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like this has the impact that it should. Like, if a beam of lightning hits next to you,
right,
I just picture it being like a bomb going off.
Sure.
And in some ways, I don't get that because it's a bigger panel. You know, like, there's different reasons for that. But I wonder if this is a longer shot where the emphasis is on the lightning bolt as opposed to the figure, if it might have had greater impact. And he does tons of these long shots. It's not like he's cutting a corner by not doing it that way. Right. But I just wonder if that would have emphasized the idea of, like, imagine being 10 feet away from a lightning strike.
Right. There's that bit here too where, like, this is actually 3 panels, because this is Banshee, and like screaming the clothes off.
Yeah.
That's probably the best you could do, but it gets lost a little bit.
And this is a challenge for not just a painted comic, but any kind of. That's what comic storytelling is. Like, how do you communicate this part?
Right. See, that feels like the way that Neil Adams builds his figures, and those are the kind of Neil Adams poses that he would bring into those late 60s Marvel X-Men's.
I think that's a really attractive page too, having the daughters split in the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one works really well for me. And having the Sentinel at different angles, you know, you're going to have 2 of them. Keep that page moving.
And playing with the steam, smoke, wind, clouds, whatever we got going on there, that's highly effective. Kind of speaks to what you were saying about the energies and stuff, putting that use to that airbrush. Interesting too, right? Because it's like 2 Friskets. It's like you got your one, that's the wide one, and then you got like another one set up so that you get that double burst.
I would love to see a great letterer, or maybe a few great letterers, play with, like, how do you do this? What would be the integration of a sound effect with this art? Right. That would be flattering, because this does nothing for me.
That shit. Yeah, that's terrible.
It's such a graphic work. Like, I would love to see a talented letterer really challenged. And like meet this work with your skill.
Man, I have to imagine that Busick and Alex Ross would prefer that as well. But I think that, like, the Marvel letters don't get anything, man. Like, we knew a girl who went to intern out there, and they had her lettering.
It's that way everywhere too. It's not just Marvel. Like, you know, you'll see writers that letter their own stuff. It's just a disrespected part of making comics. But again, for the makers out there, that's opportunity for you to do something.
Right. Here's another one, man. Maybe that's Chris Claremont. But the ginger part of it, I think, is the Cockrum. Not quite sure. And so it's the passing of the torch, right? Like, it's the girls kind of following in the footsteps. You could probably draw some metaphor between Ross and his own mother, with her art career and, you know, him picking up the mantle.
It is something Busick says in the back, is when they did Marvel's 1, he had no children.
Right.
And now, like, I think one's in college and one's heading to college.
Yeah,
so
wild.
It's cool to see that stuff find its way into a mainstream comic.
Jimmy, we were making jokes in our shoot interview about Nomad versus Sleepwalker, but the great Alex Ross put some time into Nova. When you draw this shit, like, you have to imagine that, like, he must have liked Nova.
Nova has a following. Eric Larson was a huge Nova mark, and I say that because I would read Savage Dragon and interviews and stuff with him, and, you know, I think if you're of a certain time period, because he's a young, you know, like, this would be a guy, if you're reading at a certain age, where it's like, that gets to be our Spider-Man.
Right.
And you hear that about various characters. I don't hear it much about Nomad or Sleepwalker.
Right.
But I do think there's a generation that likes Nova.
And I did feel that way about Darkhawk. I mean, I will not lie.
I like Darkhawk. Yeah, same deal. You get to start at that ground level with a character that's kind of youngish.
How much do you think this is worth, Jimmy?
I can't imagine.
Playing the hits?
Yes.
With some of the bits? Adding some new pieces to some of the bits?
It's a heck of a piece. Imagine seeing this one in person.
With this one right here, do you think he's Archie Goodwinning it?
Man, it looks like Archie Goodwin now that you say that. That's funny.
But just that one.
Right.
Because we get to see the guy who plays this character, and it's 1-for-1. It's so good.
It's funny, you know, even if he's not intending it to be any kind of nod toward Archie Goodwin, just as a reader who's familiar with Archie Goodwin and his depiction over the years and you know, who that guy is, like, you can read it. That's part of the beauty of you read this stuff, it becomes your own.
Right. Man, even getting into, like, the Atlas joints.
Yeah.
I guess that's what this whole bit is right here, man, because you got the Invaders.
Mm-hmm.
Nice little exit piece. And we got some back matter here. A little bit of thank yous. I don't know where this is from.
I don't understand this piece.
Yeah.
Like, I tried reading it, you know, it's very Mad Magazine-esque in certain ways, but I got nothing out of it.
Yeah, this is that writer from Uncle Sam, which we're going to have to go through at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
We got Busiek and Alex Ross speaking on the legacy of Marvel. See, there goes that guy. Like, that's perfect. That's amazing. Dressing the whole dude up. And Ross, man, he was flexing. He was like, you know what? They have made figures of my characters at this point and statues of my characters. So, like, I don't even need to call the models anymore now.
The Breaking Bad actor,
Yeah, Cranston.
he should be pushing to do an adaptation of this.
Good call.
He would be a really good ringer for that guy.
Yeah,
and here's your splash page.
Oh, yeah, there it goes. Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like Ross doing these kinds of homages. I feel like it is fan service in a lot of ways, especially Marvel's.
When you see that Ginger Minge, man, that's got to be Matt Murdock, right?
It looks that way to me. There was a Nova.
Oh, yeah. Coming soon, Nova.
I'm telling you, there's a certain age group that Nova speaks to people.
And this is your editor for Marvel? Is the only comic you edited?
I'm not sure this is the one. He was an assistant editor, but it's a fantastic story because he only did Marvels. He was only there a little bit, got into film, has a really good film career too. But they asked him about kind of, it might have been this guy, relatively short.
Spencer.
Yes, this is the guy. So it's really cool because he was a lot of go-between. Like, he would make the phone call to Alex Ross, your art arrived safely, that kind of thing. And as we speculated, pretty soon when Alex Ross art arrives at the Marvel offices, there's a crowd.
Right.
People want to see that stuff come out. And so he talked about in this interview having that conversation with Alex Ross, who's relatively an unknown whenever those first pages show up. And by the time the series is done, is a superstar. And, you know, this guy was basically his phone office contact at Marvel through that rise. So they got to have those conversations along the way of like, the pages look amazing. And then it's like, oh, and the book is, you know, exploding. So it's kind of a cool record of that because, again, it does not happen very often in comics.
Struck up a relationship with the Wachowskis. Like, was Spencer the Ecto Kid editor, maybe?
It doesn't say that. I'm not sure how they connected, you know, like how that worked exactly, that those guys got, you know, that there was a connection made. So I don't know the particulars of that.
So now let's take a look at the thumbs and stuff. And I, preparing for the Alex Ross shoot interview, I dug into everything that I could where Ross was concerned. And he said that what we're looking at when you look at his pencils is him working without a net in terms of reference. So this is his pure drawing.
Yes.
And he's pretty on point. Like, I was looking at this, like, dude, he fucking draws the Bridgman nose. Like, nobody draws the nose the way it really is with the two split pieces of cartilage that we all have. Like, touch the tip of your nose. Like, we all draw the nose wrong. And I'm like, man, in his fucking roughs, he draws the nose right.
I'm amazed by this. I don't know if it says anywhere, but I think these are pretty small. Like this one, pretty small, because he also does like the detailed pencils next to them. So this you can see is blown up, the big heavy pencil strokes and everything. But it also has such a confidence to some of the lines. Like, it made me think, is this light boxed over top of a rougher rough?
Right.
Because it's such cool drawing. I really like the pencil artwork at this rough stage. It's ridiculous to call this a rough. There's so much info there. Reminds me of Mazzucchelli.
Yeah, and you know, this is like, when you're doing, and you've done plenty of freelance art, sometimes this is the rough that they want. You know, like they want it at this level. They need all the clarity possible, and you can imagine that when you do something as laborious as the painted comics that he does, he wants to spell it out to the editor, get it right here, because I'm not doing it over again. Like, we don't have time to play around when it's time for color to start to futz around.
It's also a tool for the artist. Like, get those details worked out at these stages too for yourself, because the worst thing is for you to finish the painting and go, shit, I should have cropped that. I need 5 more inches on the side of that panel or that scene. Like, you got to get that here, because I don't know if an editor would require Alex Ross to redraw something, but I bet you Alex Ross would require Alex Ross to redraw something.
I totally, like, I had what is not exactly a wasted day, but it's definitely a day spent and didn't get what I intended when I was doing a cover design for my next book. Because if I would have did the roughs more detailed, I think that I would have known, like, okay, this is not a cover image. Like, this could be used for an interior illustration, kind of like one of those introductory pages to get you into the comic. But nah, this doesn't work as a... I did the whole drawing, and if I would have done a more detailed rough, I think I would have been confident, like, okay, this can't go further.
I fight myself for that, because I want to do the finished drawing,
right?
You know, and sometimes you go there maybe before you should. This shows off some of the dynamic layouts. But, you know, Ross's experience at this point, 25 years into working this way, and I would be curious, like, what information does he need at this stage? And I think part of what he needs is, what's the setup shot I've got to compose?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting to see, like, what information is actually in these thumbnails.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is a thing of, like, okay, I'm going to need to shoot this. I'm going to need this kind of winter clothes and stuff like that. I think we saw in the Killing Joke Absolute Edition, maybe, some other various Brian Bolland stuff we were looking at. But it was my thought that, like, they showed off some rough drawings. And just like these, completely publishable. You could get an inker to work on these and have a very good, above average comic book. Same with the Bolland roughs, where it's beautiful, it's all there, but then Bolland is going to take a photo and see how the folds on the clothes really hang whenever a character's arm is bent that way, things like that. That's that next level that they do. And it's something that's been on my mind, and something that I want to bring to my own next project, to kind of, like, take in more visual information and to like learn some new things.
Yeah, you see such a fundamental quality of drawing. It reminds me of another artist whose work I think looks similar to these layouts is John Paul Leone, the late John Paul Leone.
Yeah.
I love this style. You know, like, personally, this is probably my favorite Alex Ross art. And it's weird to say that, knowing what he's known for. And some of it, obviously, that's subjective. But I just really, I mean, it's so effective as drawings. It's really high-level drawing.
Yeah, the bare essence is there. And, you know, if you were to dab some ink on top of this with these bold lines, I mean, it could look like a page straight out of Batman Year One or Batman Born Again, because the underlying fundamentals are incredibly sound.
That's what I see here, too, because we have the Absolute DC Batman Year One edition has the... I think he calls them rough. David Mazzucchelli calls them roughs, but they look like this.
Those are going to be included in the artist edition as well, man. Probably at their own original size.
But I love this stuff. And to your point, you know, we looked at a Klaus collection of sort of the preliminary drawings like this, and I think we said the same thing. Yeah. I'd read a book that looked like this.
Totally.
I'd read a book that looks like this. You know, it's neat to see it, and it's cool that that Ross does let this stuff go.
Yes, sir, man. Pretty cool. And this came through the Kayfabe mailbag. So shouts to the Kayfaber who sent this to us, man. You good to go?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that big G.I. Joe book, and then this one. Got the new Amnesia 2. Go to, because I can't imagine there's too many of these out there, really. Go to hotmoonpress.com, I think, is where you could get the new Al Columbia joint. It'll be a art masturbation thing. So maybe it's time to move. Well, I guess we can move this back, but we're gonna move this off. We'll put it back for your X-Men. This fucking guy's face, man, with them sharp ass teeth. And like a black and white photo with a guy who has baby blue eyes is pure demonic.
Yeah, both of these covers are pretty strange.
Good to go if you are, Jimmy.
Yep.
Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
We have more than 1,700 videos at your disposal. We might have talked about your favorite comics. Hit the magnifying glass on the front page of the Kayfabe YouTube channel. Search for your favorite titles and check out those episodes. We're en route to hitting 100,000 subscribers sooner than later. Make that happen, and you will get the videos delivered to you faster than you would otherwise, which is important for something like this new Al Columbia set of works that we're going to be looking at, because it's not like there's an infinite amount of these out in the wild. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, hit whatever buttons are required for you to get delivered those videos. If you want to leg up on that and to get these videos even earlier than Gen Pop, what you got to do is become a patron on our Patreon. If you're at the King Kayfabe level of our Patreon, you're getting all the videos before anybody else, and you are hanging out with us in a live stream recording chat room, or at least you have access to the chat room within the Patreon to see what we're covering for the following week. And without further ado, Jimmy, let's take a look at Amnesia 2, The Lost Films of Francis D. Goodfellow by Al Columbia.
What a bizarre project.
Absolutely.
To have two issues of this. Yeah, it's a strange, oversized, and as we get into it, you'll see the oddity of this if you're unfamiliar with it.
Yes, we did a video on the first one. Who knows where Al Columbia got this guy's damn photos? There's like a little smudge on there. I think it might be photoshopped in there. But the guy looks like a damn Al Columbia character.
He sure does. Yes, he does.
From like the Biologic Show era, Al Columbia. And what we're looking at is like kayfabe, like movie posters of these fever dream, psychedelic, Fleischer Brothers cartoons on acid.
Yeah, well said. And, I think that this has been Al Columbia's interest for a long time.
Yeah.
Certainly going back into the 90s, some of his 0-0 work had qualities like this, and some of his blab work. And so, if you're searching through our archives, we do have other Al Columbia videos available to give you some background if you're seeing this for the first time and thinking, what the hell is this? Because that is Al Columbia's, in my mind, his calling card.
Right.
Nobody else's comics or illustrations look like Al Columbia work.
Yeah, pitch perfect maker of things. And he's able to create that fantastic illusion that really looks like a piece of steel celluloid. And there's subtle things, like it's a lower fidelity, so like kind of like the smeary lines are important. Sometimes there will be like a little shadow that looks like a damn cell sitting on top of a background.
Yeah, he pulls in so much of that bizarre detail that I think most people never think about, let alone think about how do you actually create that.
Yeah.
And his work is filled with that kind of ephemera. I don't even know exactly how to describe it, because it is like artifacts of other media.
Right. Go to hotmoonpress.com. This is where you're going to be able to get it, because this is a small venture. This isn't. I don't know that this is going to be in the Diamond Previews book, but hey, maybe it is.
Yeah, I would definitely give a comic book store extra credit if you walk in and this is on the shelf.
I've been in that position, Jimmy. I had to choose the best retailer of the year, 2015, and when I was scouring their shelves and stuff, if you didn't at least have Copra, then you were out of the runnings, man, because that was like the barest minimum outside of the direct market that one could go and still have superheroes. And it's like, if you don't take that leap.
This makes me think this is something that Al Columbia has witnessed. I think
it looks legit.
Maybe grew up or lived in New England in like those old houses of New England. And it feels like that's where you get the detail of like, I forget what this is called, that would go under like plasterboard, like the lathe, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But even like the brick being uneven in an old fireplace, like all these details just feel too good to be made up.
Right. And the stuff that you would see in like the Fleischer Brothers is you would see like some fidelity of line on some bricks, but not all. And you would do the rest in color. So he does that.
I think you would get this too, like the highlight line on a black, you know, like if you look at the leg or the arm on this couch, that's something that would always kind of stand out to me. And you would see this translated into marker art where people would put like the white highlight on something, and it really does create that surface, that glossy or wet feeling for a surface.
Got this like just super solid characters that are built with, it's all shapes, and create that dissonance with the demon faces, the proportions of that like Coco clown kind of character.
Always in that like peril, you know, like this poor character is never gonna have a good day.
Right.
It's very dreamlike and surreal as well.
I can see this one causing us some trouble on the channel in terms of just people actually being able to see it.
I think it's the title, even The Church of the Damned. This is fun to see Columbia leaning into some of these details too, like the text treatments and things that surround the artwork.
Right.
Chance for him to show off some of that. Because clearly a very thoughtful artist. Also good variety. You know, even just taking these 2 pages into account, you see, we've seen a lot of these kind of single images, although you're almost creating panels with like doorways and pieces within
right.
the bigger composition, but then kind of a reference to a more traditional comic style layout.
When he started playing with this style, one of the things where he really fucking nailed it was creating that like filmic look where those old Fleischers, clearly the light bulb was right here, and it just darkens out the further out you get. So when you're looking at your television, there would be these like a dark abyss outside of the frame. And for a long time, the Fleischer Bros stuff, and it might still be, fell into public domain. So you never hear anybody talk about it anymore, but it was talked about a lot when we were kids, about like film restoration, like how old movies are like eroding and like turning to dust and shit. And I think the Fleischer Bros fell victim to that. So like the fidelity of what we had to see on AMC or whatever as kids would look like this. It's like you're getting a little piece of an image inside of something that's like faded away.
That stuff used to give me nightmares. Because it was, you know, it was probably like maybe the end of that being played would have been when I was a little kid. So once in a while I'd see cartoons of theirs.
Right.
And they had those shadows around the edges, like you say. They just looked like a world that I didn't want to be in.
Right.
You know, Bad Dreams is, I think, a really good use of that kind of visual vernacular.
Yeah, man. And another thing that the Fleischers would do that was really fascinating was that they would have legitimate depth where they would sometimes build sets that were in the intense foreground of where the camera is, like physical objects. So separating things with color this way can kind of create that illusion where there might be like these glass panes with certain still things, like maybe this would be, you know, this stage would be like one piece of glass that's like 2 feet in front of hand models that are made of super sculpey here, and there would be just like layers and layers of that they could twist and turn. It was a heck of an innovation.
How much of a nightmare is this as a spread? Like reading the titles, looking at the images, thinking of them as juxtaposed next to each other. It's nightmares.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I think that Al Columbia has some struggles internally and stuff like this, man. So he's getting the poison out in the best way, you know, he could think.
Also worth noting that he's a savant. If you're watching this at home, you may look at this stuff and think this is done on an iPad or something, and I'm sure there's some digital touch-ups going on, but I bet a lot of this is on paper, which is something that has been around him as long as I've been looking at his work. I can remember people being like, hey, if you've never seen his originals, there's a lot more on the paper than there is in the digital after part. And I'd see some of his originals and can confirm that, where he's got charcoal and ink washes and all this stuff right on the page. So I would imagine that there's some interesting artifacts behind this stuff.
And see, dude, here's another good example, right, where he could choose to go Chris Ware or Dan Clowes and have a 1200 DPI black line that's super sharp and precise, which is, you know, that's what they do for their stuff. But he's going for like a 200 DPI line or something. It's less than 3 because it has that fuzz at the edge. And then I think that he could paint that. Like, I don't think that is just like a blur tool in the background piece. You know, I think he has a skill to paint that. And when you see like the little watercolor edge there, I think this is all one piece. I don't think that there's two layers. So he's even making that extra work for himself, because it's not like cartoons are made that way on one piece of paper. You have your characters on one acetate layer, painted the way they're painted, and then there's a background layer. So he's creating incredible challenges for himself that he's completely able to rise to and create that illusion.
It's fun whenever you see little bits like this. Mouth reminds me of certain Dave Cooper finishes, and it's kind of cool to see that and be reminded of, like, this is a contemporary guy that 90s and up, starts out as Bill Sienkiewicz's assistant on big numbers, to kind of speak to what his ability is in terms of materials and able to really do a lot on the page.
Yeah, I think that's showing here. You could see that sort of technique.
See Dave Cooperisms too in this background, some of the softer palette there. And then the flip side, is this a photo? It's so photorealistic, that mountain background.
Yeah, no, it has technique on it. It has definitely a lot of hand and stuff.
That is wild, because a lot's happening in that image.
Yeah.
And this one, and many of them, for that matter.
I'm wondering if he's using gouache with this stuff, because, like, whenever I would use gouache paint with certain pigments, like, little bits of pigment will kind of get caught up in the wash in a way that watercolors wouldn't.
I also think it's fun to look at this and think about, is it even a comic?
Right.
Because it has comic elements. It's a word balloon.
Right.
And it certainly works, I think, in sequence in terms of going through the pages together. But it does feel like it's also pushing that format. It's almost picture book for adults.
Right. Super iconic imagery. Every single page is a banger.
Yes.
Every page is
I think the second book, much better than the first one. I think he figured out some stuff, has a clearer vision of what he's making here, and this feels spectacular.
A little Ed Woodishness there. And once again, like, another one of those movies that I think the original prints got totally fuzzed out were Nosferatu, because of that movie was made early enough that Bram Stoker still had the rights. The Stoker family still had the rights to Dracula, and it had to get shelved. So for 100 years, the fucking prints got all fucked up, and then it's so dark when you watch those flicks. So I feel like maybe that's a little bit of an inspiration here. And listen, fish gotta swim. Al Columbia's a cartoonist, man, so you got to get one comic page up in this motherfucker where you can't dispute it. But look at this, dude, still with the smarts, dude. Ain't no tangents with the little wood thing. He's conscious of that. But maybe right there, maybe that's for a reason.
So nightmarish, even as simple as just a dude walking.
Yeah. Fantastic, man. It's Amnesia #2. We did a video on #1. Hot Moon Press. This is where you are able to get this stuff, man. Good to go, Jimmy?
Yes. Do you have an idea how you're selling this?
I'm gonna look at the other one, but I might go obscure and just like most nightmarish thing we've seen in a while.
That might be right. Lean into the horror or something. Yeah. He's such a virtuoso as a graphic artist.
Here's the thing. Also, is I tested the waters on my gram, and like 3,000 people just like the drawing. So like they put one of the drawings in there.
Honestly, like you look at that what's on the monitor now, and it's like it's so striking as just nightmare. Yeah. I think a person's very captivating. A portrait of a person, a photo like that.
Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Yeah, how on earth are we filming this?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to make this video a little quick too, because we don't have much time, and I'd like a real good half hour before we set up for the setup for Cho.
Okay.
And Eastman and Laird, just to be 100% confident. Maybe shoot a test video or two and record it and see what that looks like. Art of G.I. Joe, Omnibus hardcover. The wingspan of it, this is actually very illuminating
that looks
to me.
Super cool too.
Yeah, it does. Because I wanted Switchblade to be Hip Hop Family Tree landscape, but
yeah, it's big.
That's too much. Jimmy, I just got to whiz real bad, man. I've been holding it. Need a fresh water or anything?
No, I'm still good. I don't know, you guys at home may be able to answer some of these questions. This was a project that showed up in our mailbag. I was completely unfamiliar with it. I think it's a crowdfunder. And if you guys know anything about this, like what it cost to get one of these things, you know, at the time, how that worked in the crowdfund, I'd be very curious, because it's an exciting project to me. If somebody's making this on their own, it's incredible, like what we can make now. And I know that we've said that before, but this really is something that's like the bells, the whistles, the production. It's phenomenal. You know, the idea that maybe fans can make something like this, or you can make this without a publisher backing it, it makes me very curious. Like, what are some of the details on its production? Because this just is... It's unreal. I mean, you know, most of you guys are probably longtime book fans, book collectors. You're conscious of what books looked like 20 years ago, and I don't know that anybody was making anything that looked like this stuff. It's funny to think you could time travel back 25 years ago with one of these, and it'd be the greatest book anybody had ever seen production-wise. And it's like, yeah, two guys, not even a big publisher, a couple of guys got together. Man, $100 or so for this.
150.
150. That seems like a heck of a reasonable deal. You know, you think of like the artist editions and stuff. That's what I was asking the King Kayfabers, like if they knew those details. It's unbelievable to me that a couple of guys can produce something that looks like this.
Right.
At a price that seems in line with what a book this would cost.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how nervous I would be the day that it's like, all right, the Kickstarter closed. Let me order $150,000 worth of books
of this.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Where does,
you know, if something goes wrong with that print, you're just like, I guess that's why Kickstarters aren't guaranteed. I have holes in my stomach worrying about this coming back correctly. The other thing is, if you had a problem with this, imagine what happens if it's delayed 6 months and now you've got like rising shipping costs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways this could be tough.
Yeah, and this...
Oh, man, it says he lost like $25,000 in shipping costs.
Yeah, this exact one is a replacement. Like, it came to this guy's house fucked up, and he's like, yo, you gotta fix that. And they said, keep it. Relay some of that information. We could sit, Jimmy. We could sit. It's small enough.
It also makes me wonder, like, how many of these did they actually make?
Right. I bet you no more than 5,000.
That's a big number. Yeah. 5,000 of these are going to fill up quite a space.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Jeez. You know, it's probably coming in like 2 in a case or something.
I'm sure it's pallets. I'm sure it's pallets.
Yeah, that's a tractor trailer that's probably packed.
Yeah. All right, man. And we'll go through some stuff kind of quick, and then just kind of breeze through the book kind of fast, because it's reasonably redundant. Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
The Art of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, Omnibus Edition by R. Carson Metaxas and Chad H, we're going to call him, man, is under the microscope today. I want to remind you guys that we are a daily YouTube channel with more than 1,700 videos out there. Good chance we might have talked about some of your favorites, so make sure you hit the magnifying glass on the front page of the Kayfabe channel. Give the channel a search. Check out those videos. We've done extensive G.I. Joe coverage over the years, man, so check out those episodes at the very least. We are on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and we encourage you to subscribe, hit the bell, hit whatever buttons are required for you to get the videos delivered to you early, because like this book here, which will be Kayfabe affected, people are going to go run out and go buy this book. Can't imagine that there's too many of these 50, 60 pound books out there that were published by, two fellas. I can't imagine there's too many of them out there. So hit like, subscribe, all of that. If you want an even bigger jump on the videos that we make and the books that we present to our audience, you got to become a King Kayfaber on our Patreon, and you will get the videos before anybody else. Plus, you will be getting the option to check out our live stream recording sessions, which we've had a 15-minute conversation with the audience, with the Kings already. Without further ado, Jimmy, this came through the mail from a Kayfaber. Can't put the dude's name out there because he didn't give us that permission. Thank you so much for sending this our way. Comes put inside of like a ammo case.
Yeah, Fort Knox
or something, man. It's a pretty cool package. They did a Kickstarter to fund this thing, and something tells me they hit some stretch goals. What's very funny though is like the guys who edited this thing, they really like Cesspool. I think they must be from my era. Whoever did this, man, because Cesspool, you don't know Cesspool.
I don't know Cesspool.
That comes later, man. That's not the Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide, G.I. Joe. That's the Got to Get Tough G.I. Joe. Comes way later. But that's the box that the shit comes in. And packaged with that is a set of prints. That is pretty cool. And then you see like the backers' choices. So the backers got to choose the guys they see. And dude, this is so perfect because like the audience, right? It's fanboys. So of course they're going to do a Snake Eyes. Like this is all the fanboy stuff. And then the editor's choice, that would be like us. So it's the weird deep cut dudes. And then of course there's your Cesspool right there.
I really like this idea.
Yeah.
You know, like I get mine and you get yours.
Sure.
This is fantastic. Best of all worlds. This is the new world we live in, where you get to make this stuff and you get to have a hand in it and you get to really do the best version of this stuff. Like look at everything that's been done and then make that choice. You know, everybody that makes one after this now has the option to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And these guys, giant fans, right? So they wanted to do it right, and they wanted to bring you the biggest presentation possible and make the most comprehensive version possible. I'm imagining that these are some higher level backers, right? Showing off their G.I. Joe collection. Look at that. Is this boy a product of divorce?
Yeah, isn't that always what this toy indicates? You know what? If this is backers, again, I think that's a really great choice.
Yeah.
And it adds to this mystique. It kind of shows how G.I. Joe was this like generational toy and had a presence.
I always wanted this, man. That's Snake Eyes 3. But they sold costumes and stuff.
Look how serious he is posing with his plane.
And a little badass Storm Shadow. I love it. So what this is a big giant book full of the production art, the great backs of the blister packs, all of the little dossiers.
They were such iconic designs. Like that explosion background behind the figures really made the figures pop.
Absolutely.
You know, you wonder like who makes a decision like that, because it was a great decision.
Right, and they talk about like at a certain level of collector, dudes are collecting this art, but they're also collecting what they call Kodachromes, because there are multiple Kodachromes for various for characters where they're playing with color and trying to figure that part out. And then it gets deeper, dude, because like there's even like fold outs where they give little bios to guys like Ron Rudat, who did the bulk of the designing of the figures, and they show the blueprints of schematics and how to make them. Rudat drew a picture book using the markers and stuff at disposal. So like in between doing the character designs, he actually like did a picture book, and they have all the art for that in here, dude. Like that's his Destro, you know, before it got codified into what the cartoon Destro was. But that's what this book is, dude. This is like, it crossed my mind, like, man, I should just get all the toys again. Like, why not? You can find complete lots and stuff online, and it's like, yeah, I can afford it, but should I do that? This is all I need.
There is so much of this channel that is rooted, obviously, in nostalgia. And it feels like this is a book that if you are a certain age, like, I could see you on the floor, you know, just shaking with excitement of having this stuff going through your brain again.
Right.
Because when you're a kid of this age, like I remember getting toys and it's like you study the package. You know, I might be drawing the figures from the artwork. It's just, there wasn't a lot going on in 1982.
Right.
So This kind of stuff certainly filled a lot of time depending on your age.
I love seeing the Ron Rudat artwork.
That's amazing. You know, like this kind of thing for, again, hitting those nostalgic buttons. This seems strong for that. Do you know what kind of wow, they were like roughs and stuff. Look at those roughs.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Do you remember do you know how much this made on Kickstarter? I feel like this ought to be like $1 million Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's a good question,
It's
man.
a giant property, and this really is the sweet spot of the property.
But you can see, like, no stone is unturned. Like, every piece of licensed memorabilia shows up in here. Like, anything that had an illustration, these are those, like, little digest, like, not below digest, like little square reprints of...
Earl Norham, too, like going out and getting some of these pop culture painters.
It was Marvel. Ooh, Mutt and Junkyard. And he's Mutt. That was the joke, right?
It's so great that they pull all this different artwork because it allows for your layouts to vary as you go through. And I think that's important in a book like this. You know, if it was just this for 500 pages, I think that would get stale.
Could be white noise. You know, it's the thing that has to be figured out with artist editions, right?
Yes.
Because people, you start to take for granted that you're looking at Dark Knight Returns after, 50 pages. And it's like, nah, dude, you need to stay engaged. That's why I think the Otomo Ganga book like really solved that. You remember they had the different levels of toys too, depending on economic stratum. Like
yeah, I
there
had like that
$5 vehicles, like this one.
Yeah, although I like that. I like many of those too, though.
Right.
To be fair, but I had like the 4-wheeler that I think the twins rode around on.
Right.
And that was one of those cheapo toys, little ones.
Yeah, like that. The big ones were never. I had no hiss tank when I was a little dude.
That's such a great one too.
It's so funny too, because like this is all still before my time, really. Like these ones, man. I obviously knew it, and I grew up with the cartoon, but it really is around the time of the movie. Like these are the first conscious ones I remember buying, and I used to call them Examot, Tomax and Examot, because I couldn't like XA. How the fuck do you pronounce that?
The Dreadnoughts were always so awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like having a chainsaw.
Like that's a heck of a
gun.
little weapon right there. And then this is when they really start to get, over the top, which is the dividing line. Like there are people who don't want this, and I'm like all about that.
That's a great piece. Yeah, all of this stuff's really good, and I love that they footnote the stuff too with things like dates,
right,
credits. It's very, very useful.
Because like I'm just 3, so of course I shouldn't.
But we've seen so many of these books where like that's our critical note. Like, what am I looking at?
Oh yeah, totally.
What's this from? So I like whenever people get it right, because again, we have all a history at this point. Like you can see the mistakes and you can apply them to your book.
Yeah, no, this is incredibly comprehensive.
This is beautiful.
The hydrofoil. They must have kept some of these things on the shelf way longer than the year that they came out, because I had the hydrofoil, and I definitely was not 3 years old buying that.
Remember being captivated by that, the tank that had like the bridge that would come out?
Yeah.
And then like discovering that there's a version of that in real life.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Is that it?
Yeah. This is what I had. That's a cool looking piece. This is awful. If this is your toy, I feel bad for you.
Yeah,
That's the least fun toy.
You got the pink lunch tickets. You got to get the free lunch at school.
That one should have been included as like a
with
one
a character.
Of the figures. Yeah.
Yeah, like there was a stalker figure like that I got that had a white kayak. Beachhead.
That was interesting. There was like the figure case, and I feel like it's very. It may have been what they used for the case design. I think it was one right here.
Oh yeah.
That's the same format of like 4 characters.
Right.
Which again, like that's brilliant. Why wouldn't you reference this in your design? It seems like a no-brainer, but again, until you see people do it.
I was gonna say, is that Ron Rudat?
Oh yeah, you'd have to put yourself in one of these. Right?
Yeah, he does. I think he's. I think was that Leatherneck. I think his face is that, but like the Ron Rudat name is used. I think Larry Hama is Tunnel Rat.
This also makes me think. I'm very curious now about like all of the toys of that era, like figuring out package designs for them.
Sure.
Because the packaging is so great on these.
Great videos on YouTube with this Bill Merkline dude talking about sculpting the figures and the bucks, and like there's like a base armature that you have, and then you put your Sculpey on top, or like there was like a wax, and then you sculpt your guys so that they all maintain that like 3 1/4 inch height with the same. You know, you could put this guy in a his tank if you want. Hold up, painting over paintings.
Oh man!
I was gonna see if they were using the same faces.
Yeah, that's that like eerie comic making techniques there. Funny to see the artwork evolving too into like I don't know, a smoother, more airbrush.
Right, yeah, like this stuff. It's like a 8-bit kind of explosion, like running it through the Nintendo or something.
This is great. The schematics, you know. It's a toy, but it's like you still got to build those models.
Totally. And it's just like a way different level of thinking. You need somebody with like architectural background or something. I remember in preschool, we would have show and tell, and I remember somebody brought in a Serpentor, and I was so jealous. So what is that, age 3, 4?
That's a strong figure for preschool. Sergeant Slaughter is such an interesting inclusion, especially when you consider it's like he gives up WWF to do it.
Right. And it's super wise, man, because like we all freaking loved him. And then when he comes back into wrestling and he's a heel, it felt like getting stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
Because also you had no context of the time of these things. So he was the host of the show at the beginning of the Got to Get Tough. Like when it comes back, so he's hosting that while that shit is going on with the Iron Sheik and stuff, and it's just like, how are you good today and you're bad on WWF?
Yeah, that had to be tough for kids.
Man, I don't think this thing ever came out.
You know what? I used to buy these were some. I bought those comics like early in my run. Those came out, and I used to like Inhumanoids. See, this is the start of my era. And this would have been the Rocky figure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Until we didn't get the permission.
No, this was because he's Cobra. This is the antagonist for Rocky.
Okay.
So like you have Rocky, so you got to have a boxing glove guy for Rocky to fight.
I see.
I'm on the record in our one Dave Show episode. I love this because I wanted some civilian toys that could have some stakes or like be a victim or a hostage or something like that. So Chuckles, unfortunately, he was always a hostage. He was always somebody that needed saved because he's the most regular looking dude. This is the only Cobra Commander that I had. Like I didn't have those earlier ones. I just had a Darth Vader helmet, and he was the main. This is what Cobra Commander looked like on that like late period cartoon. Falcon, I swear to God, Jimmy, I hope this ain't like some Mandela effect shit. They did like a heroin junkie episode where Falcon was a junkie. Keep your eye on the chat, and they'll tell me if I'm telling lies, man. But yeah, he was like on the horse. They had some like DEA type drug enforcement sub, category of toys. Crystal Ball.
That's a whole wild page of characters.
And
Falcon kind of makes sense, except whenever you put him next to these three.
Oh, wait till you see Raptor. I love this figure, man. Chick Ninja, so good.
You and Brian Michael Bendis.
There's your guy, man.
Yeah.
How about that shit? Dude, that looks like a Marvel toy.
It does.
It
a lot
like
of these
figure.
have that superhero influence, it looks like.
Oh, I'm seeing that's the dude. Yeah, that's supposed to be Larry Hama. Oh, see, this is why the dude sent it back. And look at that, Mark Pennington, he's in comics. I remember this shit. Do you remember what this was? You get together your flag points, and you could send away, and this is you. So like they create like the little dossier, and like you choose all of your attributes and like what your weapons are and shit like that. And that's you as a GI Joe.
Give them your address.
Yes, sir, man.
That would be a funny thing too, is a compilation of how companies would go after everybody's addresses.
Yeah.
What were the incentives that all of us kids fell for?
This is the shit that's really going to make the old school heads like real mad when you start to get into Globulus and stuff.
Dude, this is, I have no recollection of this. I'm completely out. 87.
Like, look at that.
That's shocking. That's cool looking. I kind of like that. But...
Voiced by Burgess Meredith on the in the movie.
These are nice.
It looks like fucking It looks like Masters of the Universe toys.
You wonder. I mean, I'm sure toy designers flip flop around and new blood comes in, so could be.
Or it was just capitalizing off of
That could be too.
some of that shit.
Yeah, this is commercial art.
Yeah.
Boy, the poses I feel like are getting more heroic too.
When you blow them up, you could really see how it's really like drawing with paint.
Yes. Makes me wonder how big the originals are.
Yeah, I bet you're about that size.
Looks like these two are, well, next page. Like they're mating.
Yeah, docking. That's where docking comes from, man. Had that. I think this thing didn't sell because it was on clearance. I had this.
This one I would put in with the raft as being not a great.
Right. Yeah, but it was sold as the figure. Like it
Yeah.
was in the same section with the figures, so it was one of those deals.
It's so funny the ships or the toys that are like pretty lame. Like there was a little flatbed truck.
Right.
Or this, like a radar station.
Yeah, they're maximizing. Like it was the Kenner Star Wars stuff would have these kind of like adjacent toys where they probably kit bashed old shit and just put it out with the Star Wars label.
Yeah,
I remember seeing these things, man, and I wonder who bought these shits.
I bought one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would have
a couple.
I would have generic figures, and it was just like they seemed cool, especially if there were like guns and stuff in those.
Right. Look at Chuckles looking the most heroic he ever did. Dude, and you can tell the eras, right? This is like Magnum PI, Miami Vice era.
I like to imagine the artist being like, "Yeah, send me to Hawaii for a week. I'll do some
I'll do my
paintings
best."
there."
I feel like we've been seeing Road Pig show up in auxiliary stuff, but we haven't seen his thing yet. Look, they're really pushing him.
Yeah, I had Road Pig as a figure.
I had two different Road Pigs.
Oh, I didn't know there were two different ones.
Yeah, there's a very
That's
neon one that comes later.
Let's see Sarge's ass.
Look at that jaw, dude. It's so good.
What a synergy for both sides.
Yeah.
Doing that figure. I mean, it was such a good fit.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And he would be, man, he must be in a dozen cartoons.
Yeah, I think he was in that Serpentor, like the movie.
Yeah, I had this. Yeah, it's
good push.
I think it's the last bit of DNA that was required like comes from Sergeant Slaughter. So it's like Genghis Khan and Julius Caesar and like all like the worst dudes. And then like I think Sergeant Slaughter gets a little of his DNA in him.
That's hilarious.
Oh, here we go. Look at that, man. I mean, how could you not buy that? So like, what's the era, dude? It's like Beyond Thunderdome.
Right.
And then like Crocodile Dundee.
Dude, the range of weapons too, as to like what people get is weapons were a big thing for me, and I was looking at this one as being like that's amazing,
awesome.
but it's so different from like some people have nothing. Like
right.
I always thought the ninja weapons were usually pretty weak.
Sure, but that's pretty fun. This is like my favorite Storm Shadow.
That's amazing. Love that art.
And the fact that it's like it's Bart Sears. It's just for presentation.
86 too.
It was never meant to be seen. He designed the Cops toys, COPS.
Yeah.
Now this is a blind spot for me. Like this felt generic because this was the era where there was a ton of generic. There was like Guts and there was Bronze Bombers and all those other kind of like satellite Remco toys, and this felt generic. Like I didn't buy any of these shits. Just give me regular G.I. Joes.
As you flip through this, it's exhausting to me to think of like trying to assemble good quality images of all of this.
Right. Yeah, no, these guys had full employment, dude. They had lots of work. And look at this, dude. They're taking old toys and just giving fresh coats of paint. How funny is that?
I'm surprised it took this long to get to that stage. It feels like classic toy making. This is probably all new territory too, of like a toy that's running 6 years in and it's we're still being able to exploit it.
So you guys get the picture, man. Like this is about as comprehensive as we could get. Let's jump to the back.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal package. Seeing this does make me like, I want all kinds of, I can't believe there's not a Transformers version
Oh,
of
there
this.
will be. There will be.
But I want everything. I want all the comic stuff to be exhaustive like this. It's probably like the Artist Edition 2.0.
I'm curious how far they take it up, because like I remember this stuff, and
Wow.
there becomes yeah, there'll be like big monsters like these shits.
Now I'm trying to figure out, when does Marvel get rid of the G.I. Joe license and Dark Horse take it over? This is 94. This art.
Marvel still has this stuff, and so Marvel has it through like the tenure pretty much.
I wonder who that line art was.
Kurt Groen, somebody we don't know.
I don't know that name. Ninja Force.
Definitely had these. In fact, that like
Battle Corps.
The thing that sucks is these are the ones that I still have because they're the newer ones, you know, that just didn't. In fact, when I was a kid,
looks like like almost a Liefeld.
right? I have comics that I drew with this brand of like Shipwreck and Stalker and all these guys. This Major Blood. I really do have drawings of that. You know what? I'm gonna go grab it. I know exactly where it is. Yeah, check this out, Jim. So you see that Major Blood right there? And this is like a book full of my old drawings. Like you can see, I cribbed that's a Silvestri, Dazzler, and Jim Lee, Cyclops. I made a Strong Guy comic. But yeah, there's that Major Blood. This guy right there. Eddie P. drew in 94. But like I did whole comics as like there's my Shipwreck. Roadblock. I invented my own Lady J. This is what Beachhead looks like. We'll see his toy in a second. And this is him like repairing an elevator cable. Because I was like, I should be drawing G.I. Joe comics. Yeah, see, there's that's that Beachhead. Yeah, I was hoping that they would have the Street Fighter 2 stuff in here. Just a very little bit. Super cool. Got to give shouts to the Kayfabers who sent this in to us. It's a book that I don't think I would ever buy. I had no idea that it existed. I don't know much about the Kickstarters, or I never pay attention to any of that kind of stuff. I'm in my own world. So when this thing showed up,
that's amazing to me too, to think like a project of this scale, these things come out, like I had never heard of it either.
Right.
Just as a book, I feel like this is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the site you go to, man, you go to, I think it's 3djoe.com or just 3djoe.com will get you there, so that you could scoop up your own omnibus hardcover edition of The Art of G.I. Joe.
I do wonder, if everybody's being honest, how difficult this book actually is to handle. Which I think I've encountered with quite a few of the large oversized books that I own, where it's like, it's not the most fun. Like, you're not going to read it at night in bed.
It's the most uncomfortable book that I've ever experienced ever, because it opens wide, right? It's very heavy, so you can't even just have it on your lap. It has to have a dedicated table. But then when you have these pieces that open up 3 pages long,
right,
now I have to move my body to read it.
Yes.
So it is a functional problem, but it's actually very instructive to some stuff that I'm working on designing right now. And what I came back with is it ain't going to be that wide. As wide as I thought it was going to be. Jimmy, if you're good, I'm good.
Yes.
All right.
It blows my mind this is the state of book design.
Jimmy, we might have to do the commercials after.
Okay.
After Eastman and Laird. So we should just blast this thing out. Is there fresh water down there? Man, I need to get some sips in. I'm fucking dehydrated. Smart that they opted to put it into this hard case, because I bet if they didn't, they would get a lot more returns for damage and such. Microphone check 1 2. What is this?
Let me grab that background.
Yeah. You know what? Flip this around so that the mic is over here.
Who would have thought switching the microphone would make it weird to just like move the camera?
Right. You know what, Jimmy?
And we are looking at X-Men 5 for you guys at home. What's up?
I wonder if you move this even closer so that we can get that mic even closer to us. I just have some nervousness about it being way up there. It feels like it's never that high up. You know what? When we were testing things out, Jimmy, and the camera was lagged a little bit on the camera that will be facing us, I think I might have that solved by having that camera be 7720 DPI or whatever, whatever that resolution is. So the lower res on that one, but still 1080 on the camera looking down, and I think that might solve the lag. If not, it might be very uncomfortable. But I think it'll be small, so like maybe people just won't even pay attention.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, lock it in, do all that good stuff, and then let's fucking do it, man. And let's try to bang it in 15.
Hello and welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
And we are a daily comic book YouTube channel with over 1,700 videos in our back catalog. You can search all of those on the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube homepage. We have part 1 of the Omega Red comic there. That is X-Men number 4. We have a lot of Jim Lee. You can search by creator, characters, comic book title. I'm sure you'll find several videos that'll make you happy. We are also partially brought to you by the Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. There are 3 different levels of patronage on there. At the King Kayfaber level, you actually get to sit in on our recording session, which means you get access to all of our videos first before we even cut and edit them for the other patrons. So that gives you a leg up on the Kayfabe effect. If we show off a comic book that's rare, you'll be the first one buying it from that secondhand market before it disappears or goes up in price. So link to the Patreon is below this video, and we appreciate your support there. All right, Ed, we said if everybody came, we would do another issue of the Omega Red Wolverine fight by Jim Lee. Probably the best-selling comic the month that this came out. X-Men still selling giant numbers at this point in the run, and midway through Jim Lee's run on the adjectiveless X-Men.
I read and reread this comic so many times to the point where I think I might have bought this comic 4 times.
Wow.
2 of them were fresh out, but like I brought it to school. You know, I would bring my comics to school, like a whole stack of them to school every day, and people really responded to this one a whole lot. This was the era where people were like, "Oh, he's X-Man," because he always like crosses his arms with the claws, and like they thought that he was called X-Man. Fantastic. That little bit, it's like, ooh, is he cybernetic? You know, like Terminator head. And then this offended me because the way that Elliot R. Brown dude did the schematics for the claws, it's different than this. And a lot of people hated this, and they said that that's like where he keeps his quarters.
That's funny. It's a good cover.
Yeah.
I may not have as much good on the inside to say, but I think this cover is like I was thrilled with this.
There
back
are
in the day.
Yeah, there are marks on there. It says Williams, but I think there are some Art T-Bear marks on there on that cover.
When we get into it, you'll see it right here in the credits. There are several inkers: Scott Williams, the frequent Jim Lee collaborator; Art T-Bear, Bob Wyachek, and Joe Rubenstein. What that says to me is this issue's late.
Yes.
So we're going to see probably a few shortcuts here and there. John Byrne is still scripting. I think this is the last issue, maybe. I think he only scripts like 2 issues.
Yeah.
Maybe he scripts the next one, but I don't know, man. Must not have been a great experience for him is my guess. Because I feel like the royalty check for scripting this would have been a great experience.
Yeah, totally. And ultimately, with everything you just said, this is a wholly unreadable comic.
It is chaos.
It's boring. The words are meaningless. It's all stuff to look at, and it reminded me of like when I grabbed this comic as a kid. Dude, I copied this. I copied this. I copied that. That's what I was getting comics for these cool drawings. And I was thinking about like, if Jim Lee would have stayed a good soldier and kind of followed what the Claremont regime and stuff was setting down, we wouldn't know his name. He wouldn't be who he is today, because it's this kind of stuff that sort of made his presence, made his name. But this has nothing to do with comics.
I also think if you read this stuff, it's, you know, you say unreadable, and it was not a fun read for me this week.
Yeah.
I feel like it's John Byrne cutting promos on Claremont in that he's trying to imitate Claremont's voice.
Yeah.
Maybe directed by the editor, maybe directed out of spite. Who knows? I think those two parted on rough terms.
Weird ink in there.
It is weird. This would always appear too, like as the clipped out image, like in a Wizard sidebar or something like that.
Yeah. What's so funny is like all this stuff. Like this is on one of my Valentines, one of my X-Men Valentines that I gave out in 4th grade.
The last thing I got to point out is what they're detecting is Wolverine and Rogue and Gambit, Beast. A few of them were going into town and ran into trouble. They're 5 miles away, according to this sensor. Let's bust out the jet that goes 1,200 miles an hour. Like, we can get there in 4 seconds, minus liftoff. But, I mean, I don't know that that's a great... Whoever's planning stuff, I feel like they could have planned that a little bit better.
They're leaving a carbon footprint.
They definitely are leaving a carbon footprint. You see the other team of X-Men that are captured now in the back of these vans, and... they're not going to hold the X-Men. Come on.
This is one of those tired things that you just would see month in, month out in Marvel Comics our entire lives, where cliffhanger ending and the way they get out of the situations is always uninspired, really. They always, we know they're getting out, but it's never some kind of Rube Goldberg thing. It's literally,
right.
Like that is Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Like that is, this image would be in the dictionary definition of the word.
So
I remember copying this.
Bust out very quickly, and now we are just pretty much going back to let's redo the fight scene from issue 4.
Right.
Let's try it one more time. Noteworthy is that Wolverine is not part of this group.
Right.
They've pulled him out.
This was on one of my Valentine's cards.
I was going to say, this is an image that I feel like, I think we said in a previous episode, I think this one's been lifted also, like other people swiping.
Yeah, I think he might have lifted himself. We got to go look at we got to go look at issue 1 of X-Men.
How about Cyclops going hard on this guy, man? That dude's dead, right? Cyclops just killed that guy. If he's got, I don't know exactly how those lasers work out of his eyes, but that dude's dead.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like what it is, it's supposed to be concussion. So like it's not lasers with heat. It's concussion. So he snapped a dude's neck.
Yeah, at the very least. Always like the psychic effect where it's just like open line art and they would color in different forms. Very psychedelic. Reminds me of some of the European psychedelic art of like the 70s. I love this image. Cyclops coming out of the fire.
Yeah, Colossus.
Colossus coming out of the fire. I don't even know what it is, if it's the backlight, the simplified drawing, the color, but I think that's a fantastic panel.
It's a real interesting page because there's no like anchor really. Like the closest anchor is like this really. So it's Jim Lee doing a page of comics.
Yeah. Okay, so what did happen to Logan? He's fighting Omega Red. Not a lot of build up to that in many ways.
It's true.
I'm just going to cut there, but I guess that's okay. We do see this familiar face. That is not John Byrne, ladies and gentlemen, but that is, I think, Cornelius from Weapon X.
Right. Yeah, you can't tell those guys were marks, man, for that BWS.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is interesting because, like, when you see this line, like, that we associate as, like, the Jim Lee Scott Williams line, it's really a perversion of the Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X line. Like, when you go through history and you go through this stuff year by year and how all this stuff resonates, like, that is the Jim Lee line.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. Even some of the musculature and stuff around the back and things, there are places that are very, very Windsor Smith-esque.
And because they're not coloring it, they're in ink putting the highlights that Barry Windsor Smith would put into the Weapon X story.
Yeah. I like these kinds of things too, like the little panels. Sometimes those work really well. If you're doing a close-up of a face, I feel like that's pretty effective. Oh, man. Are you guys all ready at home? Because we're about to meet another hot, super cool character.
Oh yeah, Maverick. How about that? Now you know what else is cool is that you see these costumes. Like, this is how big this franchise becomes. Like in this era, there's figures of this. Like I have this figure from this costume, dude. And it's really funny because like it has the goggles, and when the goggles move out, when you see his eyes underneath, it looks like Anime Girl. Like it's painted by hand, I think.
It's so weird.
It's very weird looking, and the eyeballs are real close together.
Such a weird design too, because it's like the paint that you'd put the anti-reflection paint underneath your eyeballs. They're wearing that as part of their costuming.
Right.
I feel like this is one of those kind of money shots, and I actually think that this shot appears somewhere else, or a version that something that looks very similar to this. I feel like in another Jim Lee comic, possibly.
And it might be a Wildcats.
Oh, it might be, yeah. But I feel like I've definitely seen this.
Yeah.
This is really, I think, good looking though.
Totally.
And especially in the context of X-Men, because you've got him hung up as an X, but the mechanical stuff has a little bit of screen tone, feels metallic to me. And to your point of the Barry Windsor Smith, get some wiring in there.
Right, of all different kinds, dude. Phone cords.
Yeah.
Like little wires, like some Cat 5 cables are in there.
But we're just not getting much in terms of this making sense. And then you turn the page and it's the X-Men, both teams, gold and blue, which in hindsight, I feel like that isn't the best choices. And we're getting ready. And they're just coming off of like some black tie affair, this other team.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to decide. I don't know that this is a Scott Williams ink job, I don't think.
Yeah, I can't tell.
Weird marks and stuff here. And these marks actually feel like Wills, to be honest.
They do feel like Wills. Yeah, there was another place, might be later, that really feels Wills-like. But some of these marks do remind me of Scott Williams.
So if it reminds you of Scott Williams, but it doesn't feel completely like Scott Williams, it's probably Art T-Bear.
This face, to me, is very Wills, this jawline.
Yes.
But as a penciler. And
right.
Maybe he was inking too, pitching in, and maybe that's why it looks like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he is helping.
Even this head also.
Yeah, this head a little bit, that cheekbone is a Wills-esque.
Also the whole page, dude, like, not 12 panels. You never see Jim Lee do that.
Yeah, I think that may be a fill-in page.
Yeah.
If I had to guess. And now we're getting into some really loose stuff. Like, this is not Scott Williams inking.
Right. And when you see something like this, it looks like more like standard comics. So I would call that Joseph Rubinstein or Wyachek.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
I would say that's Wyachek because it looks he has less of a command of ink than because Rubinstein is super smooth.
We have the Maverick turns off the lights to try to make this a little more of an even fight, and when the lights come back on, lo and behold, Wolverine's back in charge, back on top. It's got this canister of whatever the Deus Ex Machina is for this issue. There's a lot of that, I think, in the Jim Lee plotting.
And I think when you get a page like this is when you get Scott Williams back on board. Like he's going to ink the. That's why it's crazy he didn't want to ink that 2-page spread, because you would think that that's like a $30,000 page probably.
Yeah, who knows, man.
You know, these are commercial-minded dudes, man.
I think this is kind of a neat concept of Wolverine running. He's all damaged, and now he's like running into the flashback. Works really well, I think, visually.
Yeah, these issues were so huge to me. I had this Wolverine like kids book, like a not even young adult, but it was like a novelization of his origin, and like this stuff like factored into the book. You know, the Victor Creed, the Maverick.
It's so funny, that time period. It's like the comics were selling in such big numbers. It was really like everything we can make with this stuff.
It's Wolverine grand design, because it takes every appearance of Wolverine where there's any glimmer of any kind of past, and then it stitches it in a linear fashion.
So Wolverine jumps out the window, but there's no body. And I'm not really sure what happens there. Like, having read this, I don't know where they scooped him up, how he got out of thin air.
It's like it's Omar in season 5 of The Wire.
But he wakes up in the care of Maverick, his old teammate.
Look at that outfit. Isn't that just full bore Wildstorm Image Comics outfit?
It is, and I think that Jim Lee may get too much credit when it comes to costume design, because like that's lousy.
And you know what's funny is like they had to try to make sense of that in 3D, because that was a toy as well.
There's so much going on. It feels like it's the checklist of every 90s trope is on this costume
Metal
somewhere.
leg, a big bullet, shoulder pads.
A lot of crotch wrinkles. I kind of like his mask. I'm not anti the mask, but the rest of it, there's a lot of overkill. This is another rendering that feels not traditional Jim Lee Scott Williams. Like some stuff's going on in that head, I think.
Yeah, it's true. And dude, it feels like Stephen Platt.
It is interesting to see what feels like a lot of Whilce Portacio, and I think they were sharing studio at the time, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's pitching in on all kinds of stuff. Panel here, a shadow there.
So Jim Lee is a mixture, right, of Barry Windsor Smith from Weapon X era,
Yep.
but another important component is Art Adams.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to inject Longshot into the mix, man, and then make Dazzler a viable character again, because she went off for her music career and shit. She was going to be one of the key players in the original X-Men cartoon. You know, she's in the stand-up arcade cab. You know, a character that you could play in the video game. You know, she's in the pilot, Pride of the X-Men.
I think she was in the Uncanny X-Men when I start reading it, like in the late 240s, and I don't think they do anything with her. Like all the way up to this point, she's barely there.
Yeah, she's out, but she's still a mutant. She's still kicking it. It's a way for Silvestri to still draw some babes, and then she kind of just disappears. Like nothing happens to her. But it's also the introduction of Strong Guy, because he's like her security guard.
Yeah. Full moon zine with some really weird turquoise color. It's not a color you'd see very often. And that's it. That's it for this issue. So there's one more piece, I guess, of the Omega Red story trilogy. Next issue, more Omega Red, more Long Shot, more Thrills and Chills. What more could you want?
Good comics.
Yeah, something resembling a story, maybe.
We would have, on Fridays or whatever, or maybe it was every day, there would be like the last X amount of time during a period where it was like time to, you could read anything you want. And maybe that's why I brought comics all the time. And I remember like going through this and calculating like how much allowance it would take for me to get subscriptions to everything. Like, look, you could get a subscription to Super Pro.
Wow. Got to get that early though, or else you're going to lose a couple of issues.
Yeah. But you know what? It's probably a volume argument where there's just not that much GRU that's being published. So like they just have to charge that amount. Because these are the direct market books.
Right.
That you wouldn't find. Though it's weird, man, because like I swear I saw some of this stuff. Like Ghost Rider, it can't be a direct market book. I bought Ghost Punisher War Journal definitely isn't, because I absolutely scooped those up off the racks.
Wolverine as well. I was buying that off the racks for years.
Yeah, so I don't know. I talked myself out of that direct market part, man.
It's still, it almost makes me wonder if the GRU pricing is a typo. Because it's the only comic book that's that price.
Well, it's creator owned. They're cutting more vig into it. Like I'm sure it's the correct price. Heck of a nostalgia trip, and I had all the same feelings that I had when I read it the first time, Jimmy. Which is to say, I didn't feel like reading it, just looking at the pretty pictures.
So I'm gonna throw this one out like we did with the last issue. Give us 10,000 views, and I guess we'll finish the trilogy. How's that sound?
Good to go?
Yes.
Perfect, Jimmy. It is 12:30, so let's get started. But Kings, I need your assistance right now. Thank you so much for telling me how hot my voice was on the mic. Get into like configuration of like you'll be flipping, and say some stuff, Jimmy. And I need the people to tell us like how we sound. Maybe I'll get some headphones real quick and
Okay.
see if I can tell also.
I think this is a trace image. I think this is one of those, if you did like the Mike Saints how to make comics with a digital template, this would be a perfect image for the Jim Lee version of that, because I feel like the pouncing figure, that is one I've seen many times in a Jim Lee comic and in a Jim Lee imitation comic.
Right.
Definitely one that would be in there. This is a funny issue too. In hindsight, one of the things that surprises me about the 90s comics is how like a big book like X-Men will get relaunched and it's 2 months since the last Jim Lee Uncanny X-Men issue.
Right.
Or something similar where the window is absolutely tiny, where like now we would hear about it a year before the book came out.
All right.
You'd have all kinds of lead up to it. And in this case, nothing.
All right, Jimmy. You're filibustering.
I am filibustering.
Kayfabers, man. Do Jim and I sound about the same? It sounds about the same in my headset.
Okay, well hopefully that's good.
No, switching to omnidirectional is not the thing, man. We need it to stay open so that we can catch both of us, because like either one or the other will not be heard whatsoever.
Yeah,
We need to stay
conscious too, like distance wise.
Yeah,
You know, like that's a big thing. I think is just we got to keep our distance.
it sounds good to me, man. So guys, we're gonna split and we're gonna go set up our shoot with Eastman Laird.
Good note, Jeremy. I will try to keep that in mind, lifting up whenever I'm talking.
Hold on, it doesn't look down. I mean, you gotta look down.
Well, not when you talk. If I'm going to say something, I can look up. Because I mean, especially with 4 or 5 people, you know,
right.
it's less of a fluid conversation, so I can be conscious of that.
Yeah, and the thing is, you'll be looking at Eastman and Laird, so your mouth will be facing the thing. So, all right, guys. So we're gonna split and get this all set up. We're gonna use StreamYard. It's gonna look way sexier than it did in our last thing with Peter Laird.
Yeah, should be good.
But it's gonna take a little setup, man. So we're gonna get to it. Take care, guys.